Welcome, captive audience. We're here again for another wonderful Wednesday with Don Anderson and the great
Leslie Schneider.
that's Leslie Snyder. I love it. I love it when my wonderful Wednesdays come around. How's life in San Diego?
I thought it was going to rain. It was
Mhm.
predicted to rain this week, and boy, it's been hot and sunny and clear, and
Yeah,
no rain, no
I love
rain.
it. I
Yeah,
love it. We've kind of had the opposite here. We've had, well, now it's July 1st, but June typically is all over the place here. You really
yeah,
don't know. It's a little wet today, but tomorrow we start in the low, like mid 70s. It'll be like 85 or 90 by the middle of next week. But
wow.
yeah, so good stuff. I know a lot of people aren't aware that Portland actually has very hot summers.
Huh.
It's not like Seattle. Seattle's on the Sound, and so they don't get hot because the ocean's right there. But for us, it's 100 miles away to the beach. You got to cross the mountains. Then once you cross the mountain, you get about 15-degree drop in temperature, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and much more like San Diego, probably cooler than San Diego over there.
Oh yeah.
So if it's 100 here, it might be 80 over there, maybe
Hmm.
70, right? So, anyways,
That's why
so
you
yeah,
always have such a good tan, right, Don?
yeah, always. Yeah, I think about I told you that joke when I went to Palm Springs, right? It's one of the funnest days I ever had. So drove to Palm Springs. I think it was like 120 that day. No, it's actually El Centro. And
Oh,
so we had this doctor we'd call on who was a really conservative guy. It was really difficult to get him, make him laugh. And I was always looking for a new way to get him going, right?
yeah,
So I was visiting him one day and I said, man, it was so hot. It was really hot. It was super hot. And then he said, all right, how hot was it?
yeah,
He knew it was coming, right?
yeah,
Man, I said, it's so hot. I was white when I got here.
yeah.
That
And
dude,
he was like, "Oh my gosh."
he almost busted the rib, man.
Yeah,
I think I owned this business after that.
yeah. I bet you did. That's awesome.
All right.
I
Yeah.
um
So I
I
thought
had
we'd
a
jump off. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I worked in a market research company, surveying real estate, residential development, right out of college, and
Mhm.
I kind of expanded our offerings, I guess, to El Centro and Calexico and that whole area over there. And I could not believe the number of churches per capita in that whole area. I
Oh,
mean, I would just drive around and it would be like there's a Walmart and there's a church, there's an apartment building and a church. I mean, it was just
hmm.
everywhere. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is very different than North County coastal San Diego, which is all flip flops, and
Mhm.
now it's all secular. But anyway,
Well, you get out in the rural areas, that's true. I used to have Eastern Washington too as a part of geography. And I didn't really know Eastern Washington. So we're talking Spokane and all little towns out there, right? And it's like you said, there is a church, Eastern Oregon the same way,
yeah.
every corner. And they're in use too. I mean, they're old and just beautiful. You think
Hmm.
to yourself, they built these things back in the days that some of them almost go back to the Oregon trails. So gorgeous. I think, in fact, one time I just stopped and walked in one. I was like, I just got to see that
Oh, yeah.
stone church in like Baker City, Oregon, which
Wow.
maybe has 30,000 people, about 100 miles from the Idaho border, right? Which you get into the Blue Mountains over there. I'm not sure you ever heard of the Blue Mountains.
Hmm.
So the Blue Mountains separate Oregon from Idaho. So it's all desert from like 60 miles outside of Portland. You're in the Columbia Gorge, and the climate zone changes once you cross the Cascade Mountains. You're desert.
Hmm.
It's not as hot as Mojave and all of that, but it's hot. And in the wintertime, it's really cold. And that lasts about 300 miles till you get to about 100 miles from Boise, and you cross
Hmm.
another mountain range, and that's called the Blue Mountains. And it is like and there's little rivers, and you get some more green. You get kind of that high desert pine look,
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
Reno. It's
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful. You drop down the other side, and bammo, you're suddenly in Boise, and the landscape changes again, right? It's pretty cool drive.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
always amazed at how huge the United States is.
Oh, I know. I know.
So we don't think of it. Have you seen those things where they have the Europeans coming for the cup and they've never been here before? Have you been seeing these videos?
Just that they're surprised at how kind everybody is and
Yes.
open and, you know, easy.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I've seen some of that stuff. Yeah.
Well, some of them have been about how huge they didn't realize how huge the United States was. Well, it's like I think the United States is the third biggest country in the world, and it's like 13 different time zones. We never think about this. But in the West, I'll tell my East Coast friends this. You know, you drive from like New York City to like Philadelphia, you're like on the turnpike, freeways, cars. Where there's a new state every like 20 miles, right? But the West is not like that.
Right.
When you leave Portland, the next city of any size you come to is Boise, which is 470 miles away. And when you leave Boise, you don't come to another city, you get to Salt Lake City, which is another, what, 400 or 500 miles. And then the next city is Denver, which is another like 500 miles. And after that is Kansas City, another like 500 miles. I mean, it's like, it's just huge.
Yeah.
Until you get
Yeah.
east of the Mississippi,
Yeah.
it's just like wide open space.
Yeah, you really need to spend a lot of time driving this country in order to really appreciate the landscape, the culture, like you said, the immensity, if that's a word, just the size of the country and how long it takes to get from place to place. So yeah, and that's something I haven't done enough of at all. I've spent a lot of time traveling Europe and almost no time traveling the United States, and I hope to change that someday soon.
Oh yeah, you got to get in the car and do the tour. I intended to drive my family across the United States and just never did it. We did a lot of up and down the West Coast, which is big enough by itself, right?
Yeah.
When you go from Canada to Mexico, that's almost 2,000 miles, just that. So we did a lot of that, you know, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, but I never really got east. I intended to do the Yellowstone thing.
Yeah.
That's next on the list. We just haven't done it. So
yeah, we were planning on doing Yellowstone a couple years ago, and then it like lit on fire, so we couldn't go. You remember that? It was I don't know 4 years ago, and like it was totally on fire. Like I guess we're not going to Yellowstone.
Well, hell, everything was on fire 4 years ago.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
But, anyhow, but yeah, on to business. So I thought just real quickly, I can't remember. Seems like we might have talked about this though, and this was the this Antifa stuff. I think this is absolutely fascinating in terms of the fact that this has finally happened. I mean, these people have been stuff for years, mostly because they couldn't identify that it was an actual organization. They've been hiding behind that. But these cases go down. Particularly, I'm thinking I don't know about where you are, but in Portland, they destroyed this place back when all those riots were going, and they got away with it because there was no penalty for them. So finally, to see these cases go down, and these are big time sentences. This isn't the usual slap on the wrist stuff. They're going now for federal crimes for like 10, 20, 30 years. It's, you know, on the one hand, I feel badly for them. They would destroy their young lives in that fashion. But this is treason. What they're doing, it's treason. It's the worst crime. They're destroying the very fabric that holds society together. And we cannot have that.
Oh, it's just pure terrorism, domestic terrorism. I mean, they're targeting, you know, police departments. They're targeting ICE offices. They're targeting the personnel. They're targeting businesses, just innocent people's businesses. You know, people standing on their front porch. You know, trying to just sort of represent. You know, don't come in, and they're targeting those. I mean, and we just had nobody on our side. We had nobody on the Constitution's side. So, you know, honestly, it shouldn't have had to resort to Trump declaring Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. These individuals should have been held accountable, right? Just regardless of what organization that they were part of. But, you know, I guess this gives it some extra teeth. So
let's be blunt. We have a party that was not interested in prosecuting at all. They weren't interested in enforcing the law. You get these states, these sanctuary states, and they just weren't going to do it. So it had to take a federal organization to step in and do it. They just were not going to do it. And the other thing you'll notice too, I think 20 to 25% of those defendants were infected or infused with this trans disease. Which tells you they're completely incapable of thinking anymore. And it's unfortunate, but it is definitely, without a doubt, a mental disorder. And we're going to start calling it that and treating it as such.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I read that the shortest sentence was something like 30 or 35 years for these
Mhm.
folks. Is that what you saw too?
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think there was one guy who, I hate to use the word rat of the mouth, but the one guy basically copped out to get his plea reduced. I think that guy got like 2 or 3 years, but everybody else got like maximum sentences. And of course, now
Wow.
this guy's scared to death because he's got death threats up the wazoo coming his way. Um, but it's a rough and ugly thing to toss your life away in such a fashion, so young. I mean, that's the heart of it for me.
Well, yeah, that is the devastating part is these people were just so impressionable and
Mhm,
so eager to be angry,
mhm.
right? And be hateful. And so they have the next, 2 to 3 decades to spend suffering, for what they did when they were young. And I mean, I cannot imagine that they're going to sit in prison for more than a couple of years and not think to themselves, what in the heck was I doing?
Yeah, yeah.
How in the world can I be here? Why did I just, like I'm surrounded by rapists and murderers and gang members and
Mhm. And the thing is, Leslie, our society, we created them, though. More specifically, the Democratic Party created them. But we, the rest of us, were responsible for this too because we didn't call it out. And history is replete with this stuff. So these communist movements, you go back to the French Revolution, for example, the Jacobins and how they got invented. You get a bunch of well-off college kids who've never had to get their fingernails dirty. You put them in a college that tells them how horrible their life is and how it's up to them to change mankind, and everything that your family stood for and everything the country stands for is like terrible and rotten.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
drive that envy and that anger and that wrath, and they think they can overturn the entire society. And then they go out and start doing crazy stuff.
yeah,
Um, this is precisely what happened in the French Revolution. It was people who fit that profile, young people, um, who have become unhinged from anything bigger themselves. No church, no God, no family. Right? That vacuum's going to be filled with something, and in this case, it was Marxism.
yeah.
Uh, that happened with the Bolshevik Revolution. The Russians did the same thing. You get people like this, that category. You fill their head with a bunch of garbage, and the public school system's done it all the way through the university system. Um, every revolution, it gets filled with this kind of stuff, and it's precisely what we have going on here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the reason why I'm looking away is that I used to be not used to, I still am, but back in high school, in the early days, of, even like middle school,
Right, right.
I started listening to Oingo Boingo,
Mhm.
and so recently was listening to music, and the Oingo Boingo song "Capitalism" came up. Have you heard that song recently?
I've heard of the group, but I've never heard their music that I can think of.
Okay, well, their song talks about young, socialist, privileged brats. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until, I mean, I just kind of like, wasn't really paying attention to the
Mhm.
lyrics in that way. And a couple of years ago, I heard the lyrics of that song and realized, Danny Elfman, who wrote that song, who's a musical genius, he identified in the 80s
Mhm.
this mentality that spoiled, rich, and I guess you don't have to be rich, but
Mhm.
spoiled, entitled young people who've never had to do anything for the things that they have,
Mhm.
right? And they start preaching to other people about how they should live their lives and they migrate to socialism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's, and that's, I think the radicalization that happened with these Antifa people to the, it is more hate filled. I mean, socialism is hate filled, but this was, of course, more violence, like actual hands on violence. It's just, but it's all the root of,
Sure.
somebody has something and my life is terrible and you're to blame. And sometimes their life really isn't terrible, but they
Mhm.
just have this angst, this young person's angst, right?
Well,
And then they mold that and they noodle that until then they weaponize it.
Yeah, and two, and I'm not saying this necessarily in defense of that, but the ones that don't come from well-off families. But let's just say you were told your whole life all you have to do is go get a college degree, and then the world will be rolled out in front of you like there's nothing left to do, right? So these kids go out and get college degrees and a bunch of silly stuff, and the world has changed. Now we have something like 30% of the population has a college degree. It's nothing special anymore, 35%, and they get the degrees in nothing stuff. So the degree is diminished in terms of its value because now a bunch of people have it. And
Yeah.
it's diminished because they're majoring in stuff that's useless.
Yeah.
And then they get, and then on top of that, when we were in college, it didn't cost anything. So now
Yeah.
they're getting out 50 to 100K in debt. They got a degree that's useless and they can't get a decent job. Now you talk about ticked off, you know, they're thinking their first job, by the way, they're going to get a manager's job and tell other people what to do. And they roll into that first job and some middle-aged guy who's got a high school diploma is telling them what to do. This is not a great recipe.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I'll tell you what, Dan. It took me a long time, like longer than I am comfortable saying out loud,
Mhm.
that the best way to learn and progress and to develop relationships, like meaningful relationships with people who will positively impact your life, are
Mhm.
the best way to do that is to be as humble as possible, to be as open as possible,
Mhm.
and a yes ma'am, yes sir every once in a while helps quite a bit, you know. And so
Yeah.
but I think there's this expectation when you know people get out of college that they know a lot, and so they think, well, I don't want to, I think I know a lot, and if I get into an uncomfortable situation where maybe I find that I don't know everything, I'm going to just pretend that I'm just going to keep pretending that I know everything. Right. And because otherwise, you know, they're going to think that I don't know anything. They're going to think that maybe I shouldn't have been hired. You know, there's all this negative connotation with not being the expert, not having all the answers. But it's like, you're 23. And frankly, maybe you're 53. You don't need to know everything.
Yeah, that, and quite frankly, at 23, you don't know anything. I don't care how many degrees you have. When you walk into that business, wherever that business is, it's been around a lot longer than you have, and the people in it have been around longer than you have, and you don't know what you're talking about. You might look at something and think like you know the answer, but you don't have the experiences. That thing that they're doing is being done for perhaps a reason you have no idea about until you've been around for a while. Now, for sure, there are some things that are going to be, you know, that you can fix, but you can't walk in and tell other people what to do, particularly when they're twice your age. And this goes back, you touched on some things a moment ago like that. And what it really is the virtues, because they've not been led to learn how to lead a virtuous life. So what's the opposite virtue of a pride is humility. You can't get anywhere in the work world without the virtues. So you got to be humble so you can be open to being taught by somebody else how to do something, right? You can't be getting angry, so you got to be patient because you're going to be told that you did something the wrong way a whole bunch. So you got to be coachable, right? So you go back to all of these virtues that you have to be in order to get it. Diligence, so willing to work harder, go the extra mile. You know, you got to do those things. And a lot of these young people, because this is the other thing that's changed over the last 40, 50 years, their first job is when they're 22. You know, you and I'm sure you're the same as me. We were working, we were 14. I mean, I was working when I was 14. At first, in terms of a formal check with a FICA on it and all of that, I think it was McDonald's. I was like 16, but I was doing gardening jobs and stuff, getting paid cash, you know, when I was like 14, 13. Everybody I knew was doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these kids,
yeah. I mean, the work ethic of the previous generations, well, but because we wanted to get out of the house, like this whole culture of like everybody. I mean, I don't know, that I look around and in some way I'm kind of jealous that, you know, there's these families that just love to hang out together, and they just, you know, they spend all their time together, even though they're kids, right? They're in high school still, or they're in college, and they just love to hang out. And I was not that kid. Like I didn't know any of those kids. I mean, I knew kids that like their parents, but they weren't hanging with their parents on a Friday night, right?
Mhm.
And you wanted to make money to get the heck out. You needed to buy gas. You know,
Yeah, if you want to buy your own clothes,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, just responsibility. That no, for me, I didn't want to ask my parents for money, and it wasn't like we weren't rich, we weren't poor. But by the time I was 14, I wanted to buy my own school clothes and do all that stuff, and not ask them. I don't think I ever asked for money after I was 14. I bought my own stuff. I can't think of a time where I asked them for money
Yeah.
after I was 14.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And, really, there's not a whole lot that you need to buy when you're 14,
Mhm.
15, 16, under 18, right? I mean, your parents are paying the bills, right? And so you're just, a few things here and there and having fun. But yeah, anyway, the point is that this idea, I mean, it's like you see it in the delayed driver's licenses.
Mhm. Yeah.
These kids are 18, 19, and they don't have a driver's license.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. And parents, and I saw this a number of years ago. Dad didn't want his kid to get a job at McDonald's. I'm like, what? She needs to have that experience. That experience of learning a work ethic, learning what the general public is like for good, bad, and ugly. That's where you learn that stuff. One thing about fast food is you will learn how to work. And I have no regret. I never want to do that again. That's some brutal work. But I'll tell you what, when you learn about work ethic, being on time, taking care of customers, dealing with rude people,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with like picking up trash in the parking lot,
No.
wiping on a table.
Yeah.
That's like how you learn to work. And
Yeah.
at one time, I saw a statistic back in like the 70s. It was something like 50 or 60% of American kids had worked at a McDonald's. This is like in the 70s. Now, obviously, that's no longer true. But that's McDonald's. That's not even including Dairy Queen and Burger King and all the other ones, right?
Right.
And that was a great thing. They used to call themselves the world's like training grounds or something, or America's training ground for work. That's pretty cool, you know.
Well, and that was also when they had room for young people, right? Now, a lot of these places, they won't hire young people. They'll hire these adults, and these adults will be in these jobs, for 10, 20, 30 years. It's like, what the, like,
You got
no,
two reasons.
no, that's not
Two
for
reasons
you.
for that.
Minimum
When you-
wage is not for adults. It's for kids. That's the
Well-
point. It's to get them trained up to do something else.
Well, when you make the minimum wage $25 an hour, guess what? You can't afford to hire a teenager and train them. When you're paying somebody like $10 an hour or something, now I have the time to get them up to speed. I have the time to deal with the mistakes teenagers are going to make, not showing up, all that other stuff. But $25 an hour, I need somebody who's going to be reliable now, right? And that's one of the reasons why you see that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this illegal immigration thing is the other thing. Now, granted, that's been taken care of here recently, but before that, hey, they would take those jobs and take them for less than Americans would.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So okay, let's pivot real quick to we had some Supreme Court decisions happen this week.
mhm.
And some we like, some we don't love, but we see some opportunity for positive action if Congress will take it. So one of them was the anchor baby,
birthright.
issue. Yeah, birthright. Yeah.
So I thought actually on the surface, obviously you're disappointed. You want that to get done. But I have to say, I can see why the Supreme Court did what it did. That's Congress's job to do that. It's not the Supreme Court's. So they're just throwing it back over the fence to Congress. And the cool thing about that, though, is it's going to force these rhinos to step up to the plate. Like,
Right.
you got to sign up to that now.
Yeah. Now everybody really is looking at you. And I don't remember who it was, that one congressperson who is reintroducing Harry Reid's bill that he introduced in, what was it, in the 90s? When was it, 1993 or something like that? When Harry Reid introduced the bill that was against birthright citizenship, and it just languished. It didn't get passed. And so who is it that's reintroduced it in its original form?
Boy, I'm trying to see who said that. I think it's I'm not getting the name of the person that's reintroducing it, but it's going to be introduced using the exact same language he used then.
Yeah.
That is absolutely priceless.
I mean, all these Democrats. I mean, you can just we see these clips that they show us on our side of Democrats, Bill Clinton, Obama, speaking out against gay marriage, speaking out against immigration, speaking on all the different, and then they flip, right? They
Yeah.
just immediately flip because it no longer fits the narrative. And of course, we've got this whole new group of socialists who are taking over the Democratic Party.
Mhm.
And so,
Well, we definitely have to speak to that. Wow.
but they're
That is
still, I mean, they're vocal, but
Mhm.
they're like, they really are a minority.
They are, but here's the thing. The Democrat Party, large Democrat Party, has sat on the side and let this, they created this monster.
Yeah.
This has been happening for a long time. In order to be as anti-Trump as they possibly could be, they let those people just basically steal the limelight. And now, who's the center? Where's the JFK? Where's the Clinton? Where's the Hubert Humphrey? Where are they?
Yeah.
There isn't anyone, and,
Yeah.
and the most vocal people they have are the craziest.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, and so I mean,
Right.
I think I heard that what's her name? The one in New York is filing to run for president, which shouldn't surprise us.
Yeah, I've heard that, AOC. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I think this has been a group of people that have been exciting for the Democrats to watch because they can sort of feed them these flash issues, these flash phrases, right? And then they'll throw that out there, and they'll be outrageous.
Mhm.
And the Dems can kind of, then you can have the older Dems who, then try to posture themselves as just a little bit more calm and a little bit, like I am, I'm the adult in the room. These are my children and I certainly approve of them, but what can we do? They're just rambunctious, right? Well, now the children have taken over the narrative, right? Because, like you said, because the older, more senior Dems have allowed this rambunctious group of people to grab the spotlight. So now everybody thinks that they are the party. And I don't think that they are, but they've completely derailed the issues. They've completely dominated the conversation.
Well,
And with these three recent, primary wins against traditional Democrats, which, what is a traditional Democrat anymore? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, I feel like there was that one person who won the primary. She's a hijab wearing, Muslim who said out loud that the United States deserved 9/11. I mean, isn't that against the Constitution?
Yeah, that begs a lot. I'm going to follow that in the back of my brain for a minute because I think yes, but you have the what do you call it? The 20% crowd, I'll call it, right? So that means that we have 80-20. There are certain things that there's 80-20 positions. So chopping up the children, girls in sports, right? Men and women's sports, for example. These are, communism. These are all 80-20 issues where they lose all of the time, except in those specific places. So what that means is, and this is what I think is going on in that party, the leadership of the Democratic Party is not reflective of the run-of-the-mill Democrat. And it's taken a long time for the run-of-the-mill Democrats to catch up and realize that. So the 20% that will vote for these people, yeah, they are the loony left. But the rest of the party is filled with what you might call moderates. The media has ginned up this hatred of Trump. But I will tell you that I don't believe, though, that that those people are for example, they're not for no prisons, no police. I hate Israel. All of this other stuff. And James Carville pretty much, said pretty much those same things.
Yeah.
I don't recognize those people. That's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
And so the problem is they're going to win in their areas, but they're going to cause the rest of the Democrat Party to just like tank out at the polls.
Yeah.
So for the party large, this is not great.
No, it's not. It's not great at all. And I can see them trying to. I mean, what are you going to do? Are they going to still fund these radical candidates? I mean, are they going to, if they have any money? But like when they're looking at the landscape, and they're thinking, okay, I could fund the campaign of a socialist, or I could just let that person peter out. They've got to create their own juice in the engine, and I'm just going to let them be. And hopefully, I mean, I don't want a Republican to win, heaven forbid, but I certainly don't want a socialist to win, right? And so maybe they can just, look away and, pay attention to the other races, and then the Republican at least stands a chance.
Well, I'll tell you, at the presidential level, I think they've just destroyed themselves. We'll see. I mean, anything can happen. But having said that, so they ran off all of the moderates. So the moderates became Republicans. They ran out Tulsi Gabbard. They ran out RFK. The guy from Pennsylvania senator, he's sidelined because he's essentially teetering on being a Republican. Fetterman's based right. The Pennsylvania, is it a senator or governor? They firebombed his house. Didn't like him because he was Jewish. He's the one guy who had a chance. But he's definitely got no chance because he's Jewish. So who's left that could be a centrist candidate for them? I mean, their firebrand brand left is so wild and radical, they're not going to allow it. I mean, what's his name? What's the senator's name in New York that read the Schumer? His approval ratings are like in the toilet. If AOC wasn't so hot to trot to be president, she could take his seat like now. Which probably is the smart move, but the ego of whatever her age is so great that she just can't see herself doing that. Probably.
Yeah, she's like 29 or something like that. Yeah.
She like him. That's the other thing, though. You got to be 36 to run for president. So.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe she's older. Yeah, I don't know.
Older. Yeah, you got to be 36 to be president. And so now you got. I mean, think of this lineup: Kamala Harris, AOC, and this clown from California. I mean, can you, sorry. We didn't contribute to that one. The Northwest has got enough problems. We're not contributing to that one.
Yeah.
To think that would be the lineup without.
What about Pete Buttigieg? Is he out?
I'm not saying he might run, but he's got like zero. I mean, none of these guys. He's out there trying to be like, he reminds me of Dukakis. I don't know if you remember this when Dukakis rode around in the tank, to show he was macho enough to be like a military guy against the Russian Cold War.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a little older than you, but they say that that was the end of his run against Reagan. Was that picture of him in a tank because it just didn't fit the part. Again, Democrats always try to be something they're not. Buttigieg is now running around sporting a beard and trying to be.
Yes.
Now we got to get the white male vote. Dude, you just don't look it.
He's gay. He's not going to get the white male vote.
He's trying to look all rough and tough and wear boots and eat barbecue. It's kind of like Hillary running into a black church and trying to fake a black accent. It just don't.
No, straight men are not going to vote for a gay guy.
Especially not that one.
I mean, well, and that actually, like that's not true. Like I think there's a lot of straight men who would be like, can he do the job? Is he my CPA? Right? Is he performing a function? But you don't want. I mean, Carl DeMaio, for instance, he's a assembly member. Maybe he's a senator. I think he's an assembly member here in California, in San Diego. The guy is gay. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely the most effective Republican in all of San Diego County, in my opinion. And we have very few, but the ones that we have, I mean, we've got some good ones, right? We do have some. Carl DeMaio the guy has been on city council. He's run for things. He's been on the guy can fundraise. He is a social media he understands how social media works. He understands how to mobilize. He understands how to fundraise. Okay, that's the kind of guy that you go, all right, I see what you're doing and I can get behind it, right? But Pete is trying to run on his personality. He's trying to run on his image, right? Like, show me something that you've done, right? Then guys,
that's the problem. None of them have done anything. I mean, there's no way that Gavin Newsom can run anything. There's no way that AOC can run on anything. There sure as hell is no way that Kamala Harris can run on anything. They don't have anything to run on. I mean, what can you go to the American people and say that you accomplished? Um,
Well, they'll say all sorts of stuff. They lie, right? But
but
you
this is
know,
all instantly verifiable. I mean, instantly.
yeah, yeah. Well, and so then we go back to with the with the Supreme Court decision on what was the one that's really teeing up the SAVE Act, and just the idea that the SAVE Act, in order to, it was the ballot thing. Well, it was the birthright, but it was also this idea that ballots can continue to be counted past election day. Remember,
Yes.
this was a recent decision that came down, and SCOTUS said, yes, states can continue to count ballots after election day if they want to. If we want a remedy for that, Congress is who writes the code, who writes the law and the guidelines for elections. So let's go, Congress, let's get in. And so this is the tee up for Congress to get to work and actually codify all these things. And that, all these Republican senators that, played footsie with the Democrats and bowed out, right? Maybe thinking, well, gosh, I'm in a tricky reelection situation. I'm going to try to be appealing to the Dems. Maybe that's why they did it. Or maybe they're just a never Trumper. And so they're going to just go against whatever Trump says, and the SAVE Act was his, so we're not going to do it. But now SCOTUS has said, this isn't our playground.
Yeah.
This isn't an issue that we are able to decide on. It's not a judicial branch issue. This is a legislative branch issue. So Congress, get to it. So,
and see, honestly, what we have, these rhinos aren't Republicans. They're Democrats. They're in sheep's wool, in sheep's clothing. They're saying what they need to say to get elected because they know what they have to say in their districts to get elected. If you're a senator, you got 6 years. So you don't have to, you can lie like a rug. Once you're in office, you're good to go for 5 or 6 years. And what you do is you vote on just enough stuff that's not that important so that you can stay in office. And then when the really critical stuff comes down, then you go do the other thing, right?
You stay home. That's what they do. They will just not vote.
Right. And so that's why you have to, what do we call it? What do you call it? When they get them out of there, there's a term we use for it now. But they got to be, they got to be run out of office, like that last crop out of Indiana and all that.
Yeah.
The Republican electorate, primary, they got to be primary. And for the first time, we're actually remembering what you did 3, 4, 5 years ago and primarying them. Remember those? There was a bunch of congressmen and women who voted to get Trump, basically impeached before, and it was like 12 of them, and 11 of them got primaried. Right? That's the way you drive the message home. Yeah. And so now coming up, if you want to stay in office, then you're going to do this. I'd love to see them primary because they're not true believers anyway. I mean, they're not on board. They are Democrats.
Well, they're Democrats. They're socialists. Right. If you think that it's okay to come over pregnant, drop your baby, and then everybody gets to stay, I don't know what that's about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the easiest thing ever. If we don't have voting laws, then we can't be a constitutional republic. If we're going to let anybody vote, that just walks in and drops a baby off, that's just not cutting it.
Right.
Or this mail-in ballot thing is an absolute joke. We got a congresswoman in our area, and I just saw some of these ads she's running on YouTube talking about how bad it is Trump's after voting. We want to make sure everybody has a right to vote. And they got these commercials of people saying things like, "Oh, I work, so I have a hard time voting." Oh, this and that, all these excuses. That is like bovine scatology, to use the words of.
You know what? I work so hard. I just didn't have time to pay my taxes. Yeah. I work so hard. I just can't pay my mortgage. I work so hard. I can't feed my children. Like, where does it end? Right?
It's nonsense. You have time to stop for 5 minutes, just like our parents and grandparents did at the local school or whatever.
Yeah.
Pull out the piece of paper and like drop that off, or rather, stop at the booth, do that thing. If it's not important enough for you to stop doing that, then you have no business voting.
No, and damn straight, you have plenty of time to get on Instagram, and watch your TikTok. I mean,
it is absolute nonsense. But I do see a lot of positives on that too. For example, at the federal level, Trump is requiring that they code the ballots so that the postal service is making sure that the ballots belong to a certain person, so they can't do what they've been doing with all that side of it. So I think we're going to see much more enhanced integrity on the voting. Not perfect, but the ability to cheat like they did before, or cheat like they did in LA.
Tell me more about that, because I didn't really dig into
I'm not.
post office requirements. So
I don't know. Yeah, I'm no expert on what strategies, what exactly that is. But apparently, they're able to code the envelopes that they're mailing these things in, so that it tracks back to the person. They can track back to the person who mailed it. So you can't have people who are casting ballots who aren't real citizens, kind of a thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, or getting homeless people to cast these ballots, people who don't even live in the state, and all those kinds of things, right? So apparently they figured out technology to do that. So it increases the integrity of the mail-in ballots. It's not as good as going to the booth to me, but yeah.
I'm wondering what that is. I mean, how are they going to verify I'm taking this from a living, unique person? I'm not receiving the same ballot from 5 versions of this person. I'm curious to know what that'll be, if it's a fingerprint, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't have that level of in-depth. I just can't pay that much attention to that level of detail.
Yeah.
All I've read is it's way better than what they've been able to do. We'll see.
I just feel like if you've got a mail-in ballot for a state or a local office, okay, so I'm in San Diego and I'm voting for my local people, and my ballot doesn't arrive till 21 days later.
Now, see, that part's nonsense.
I mean, Amazon can get me something overnight. How is it that my ballot can't make it from North County to the registrar's office in, Midtown? And it takes 21 days.
See, I would argue with you too, and I don't see anyone making this case, but there's an inherent conflict of interest when the government is responsible for managing that, when it's in the interest of government employees for one party to win over the other.
Yeah.
So I don't think the post office, personally, I don't think they should be involved in it at all. And I can tell you from personal experience. Now, I remember this happening around 2016 or 17. I had conservative publications that just stopped showing up. And for a while, my wife and I were thinking, well, maybe they just mismailed it. And we started following up and checking. And to make a long story short, it turned out there are people at the postal workers who were just throwing those publications in the garbage can, right? And you started seeing that nationally. So if you had a subscription to something like, say, the National Review, back in the days when it was conservative, they just weren't showing up, right? They just throw your stuff in the garbage can. That was happening all over the place.
And there's no accountability.
No. I mean, because the government employees want, generally, especially if you're in a leftist area like we're in, they are taught that stuff. I'm telling people are unhinged. So there's yet another reason why the post office should never even be used for this in the first place. If there's going to be mail-in balloting, it should be with FedEx or DHS or something, right? Because they don't have an interest in it.
Well,
I mean, you got a candidate who's talking about cutting federal jobs. Now, where's the self-interest in that?
Right.
And the reality is the post office should go away anyway. We all know that.
Well, the post office is a private entity. I mean, it's fully funded by the government, but they're real quick to point out that they are a private entity.
Well, if they were private, they'd be out of business because they lose a fortune all the time. It's they call it quasi-governmental, which means it isn't really. It's a government entity. Yeah.
So should the coaster, and all the rail lines, in at least in California. I mean, nobody's making money.
No, I mean, you talk about, and there's a classic example. If that was privatized, you would have more than 7 miles of railroad track laid out in the middle of nowhere, which is what they have. What it's been like 30 billion. They got
well, you're talking about the high-speed rail. I'm just talking about the existing coaster that nobody wants to ride on because it's drunks and homeless, and because it's a warm place to sit, right? Or they're on drugs, and so they want to just stir the pot and wreak havoc. But I don't know.
See, they want to build the same things. this goes back to you remember my conversation about the 15-minute city and the trying to get everybody in an electric car or on public transit.
Yeah.
So here, Portland, so Columbia River separates Washington from Oregon, and Portland's the big city. Vancouver's a smaller city. You got to cross the Columbia River. They've been trying to do a light rail project across the river forever. The citizens of Clark County, which is Vancouver, have been voting it down forever because what it basically would do, I call it the criminal transportation system. So Portland can ship its crime across the river. Because what they have in Portland, it's a beautiful concept. They have a light rail that runs east to west the entire length of the city. It's a beautiful system, but as soon as the sun goes down, every vagrant, ne'er-do-well, drug fiend, sex fiend, prostitute, all kinds of stuff's going on that thing. You don't dare get on that thing, right? And they don't check, they don't charge. The only way that system works, and this is the thing they don't want to do because they're leftist cities, is you have to, I hate to say it, you have to charge for stuff. You have to pay for stuff. Meaning when you get on the bus, you have to pay. And if you allow people to do this honor code thing, are you kidding me? I've had a ton of relatives who are bus drivers for the city of Portland, and I could tell you stories. Unfortunately, we're in a public forum, so I have to keep this clean. But these guys will have you holding your sides laughing with the stuff that goes on the bus, whether it be drugs. Okay, I'll just say it, getting it on, right, just right there on the bus. And he just look in the mirror like nothing I can do about it, right? And it is fight, you name it, right?
What do you mean there's nothing you could do about it? You pull over and say, get off.
Well, you want to look, you're a bus driver, you want to wind up fighting these people and they got needles and drugs and all, it's not worth it. Right?
What about all the rest of the passengers?
Those are the ones that have to get off. So the regular passengers just stop riding the thing. So the bus is riding around with all this going on it. I kid you not. So basically they put a bunch of bulletproof glass around the bus drivers and they just ride around, right? Just don't look back there. That's how it is.
That's terrible, Don.
Yeah.
That is terrible.
Yeah. And
I want to get a long distance taser, and just be like, out. Pull your pants up, get out.
But see, this is how the left destroys life for the regular citizen. I can't remember who said this. One of the founders said, if you don't, something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, if you're trying to be kind to help the criminal, it's really unkind to the regular citizen.
Of course.
Because you're destroying the life of the regular citizen. So they can't use this transportation system that they're paying money for, but you're giving it to criminals to destroy it so nobody else can use it.
Well, even a child knows what is fair and what is not. Mm-hmm. A child is, they figure that out right away. How come you got an ice cream and I didn't? How come you get to watch that show and I don't? How come you get to stay up and I have to go to bed? They figure that out right away. But as adults, we're supposed to have a different code. So
you have two kinds of these leftists. There's the leftists at the top who know the strategy, they're doing it on purpose. The objective is to destroy civilization, right? And they get away with it because you have the dummies at the bottom who are the kind-hearted, who don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or tell somebody right from wrong. And so they allow these people and these crazy DAs who won't enforce the law. So these people get on here and do all these crimes, and then they don't do any time. In fact, a friend of mine that was saying, this is true in Vancouver. He was saying that one of his cop friends was telling him that there's basically about 250 criminals who do all the property crime, vandalism, that sort of thing. You took them off the streets of Vancouver to be like no crime. Being like no crime. None of that kind of crime anyway.
Wow.
It's the same people over and over again doing the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So
well, we talked about, sorry, I don't mean to change the subject bluntly, but I was just kind of going through my notes of things that I'd written down. I know we talked about Bolton last week, how he pled guilty to mishandling classified, files, $2.5 million fine and up to 5 years in prison. I love that. I love to see where it's going because there's so many other people. I mean, Biden, remember how he kept files in his Corvette? or in
Yes.
the, or is it in the garage where he kept his Corvette? Whatever. But I mean, there's just so there, and Hunter had files. I mean, just whatever.
Yeah.
$27 million in LA hospice fraud has been revealed as one medical scammer used dead patients.
Mhm.
Dead patients. I'm telling you, Don, I missed the memo. I have been working like a freaking dog, just like you and I were just talking about, since 14, 15.
Mhm.
Medical fraud,
Yeah.
hospice fraud, Leering centers. How did we miss this, Don?
Yeah, well, that's the deep state thing. I never realized how deep it was. I remember listening to talks. I think it was the guy who does The Blaze, like 10 or 15 years ago. I never really comprehended. Yeah, he was way ahead of it. I
Yeah, he
never
was.
really comprehended how deep it was. And I'd kind of like to, yeah, that's, maybe he's exaggerating.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy talk. If I ever get to meet him in person, I will tell him in person, I owe you a gigantic apology. This is like way worse than I think the vast majority of us thought.
Well, it doesn't even have to be just things as egregious as this. So I can tell you that I used to do contract work for a woman who owns a marketing firm. I was one of her, contractors, and she introduced me to a whole segment of the economy of publicly funded and grant funded work. And this work it funnels through economic development boards, workforce boards, community colleges, all sorts of government entities will take funding with a specific agenda in mind, right? They have a certain sort of outcome that they're looking for. But the outcome is very nebulous. And so there are millions and millions of dollars that are funneling through these programs and these contractors to create fancy reports and a narrative that says that, we've provided job training to so many people and we've prevented, we've partnered with, the local community to, basically prevent or dissuade or whatever so and so many people from being homeless. And we've, provided so many meals. So like there's all these different, like I said, these narratives. They're only required to tell the narrative. That is the deliverable. They don't actually have a required deliverable and accountability of anything real. Like that guy right there was homeless on that corner. And I took him in and he's now clean for 2 years. He's, he's got a job and he's now communicating with his children again. Like that is not the level of accountability that these organizations have. And that to me is a crime because you and I, we do have that accountability in our jobs and in our lives.
But see, this is why it's not the job of government. Period. It's not something government should be doing in the first place. I remember I think it was President Adams had he had a son who was a ne'er-do-well, bad news. God wouldn't do anything right. And some people wanted to pass legislation to help him help his son. Pretty sure I get the story. If this story is not exactly right, it's close to it. And he refused to sign it. They said the reason why was because that's not the job of government. And you get private organizations go do that, right? But the government's not equipped to do that. And the things that work best in this country is when organizations like church groups, Red Cross, all these other things, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, those are the outfits that do that. The government has no business taking taxpayer money from one group and giving it to another. If you freely want to give your money to an organization to do that, and the beautiful thing about doing it that way is you have direct control and influence over that outfit, and you're more likely to make sure that they're doing what they're going to do with the money rather than sending your money to Washington, D.C., and then they send it to Minneapolis or Duluth, or something, and then who knows what happens. And what usually happens is nothing. I'll tell you, my first run-in with that was when I was in college. My wife and I worked for this organization called the Upward Bound Program. And the objective was to get kids who were in socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds put them in a college setting and get their grades up, this sort of thing, right? And we got there and we immediately noticed that there was no tracking, just like you were saying, there's no tracking whatsoever of what happened in the years past. Who came in? Did their grades go up? Did they go on to college? Did they graduate? It would just be the next year and they come back and do the same thing. So it was basically a summer party every year is what it was.
Yeah.
And my wife and I did a paper for a business school class. We treated it like a business with measurables and all these kinds of things. And the director practically freaked out. She didn't show up at the presentation. She wanted no parts of it and we were too young to realize what was going on until afterwards. Oh, she's afraid of accountability. What is it going to look like? We do this presentation and we're recommending that you have these tracking devices and all those kinds of things. Any professor looking at that would be sitting there thinking, well, you haven't had that? You got a couple of 19-year-olds telling you that you need to do this and you've been in this thing for how many years? Any logical person would think that, but we were too young to get that. It was like later on I realized what was going on.
Yeah.
And,
you're like,
this
isn't helpful. Yeah. This is actually, she might lose her job over this.
Yeah. And every September, this is my first run-in with government stuff. The government fiscal year ends, I think, October 31st. And every October 30th, we would go to the local buy mart. Maybe there's like an extra $20,000 left in the budget. We would drive in a couple of station wagons and vans and just buy stuff. Just buy stuff. We gotta drain this 30 grand, right? And even as an 18-year-old, I was like, there's something funky with this. That's when that was my first move towards conservatism, actually. I watched taxpayer dollars just getting urinated right down the drain. And remember, this is small potatoes, right? You're talking 30 grand. Now think about the departments who are doing that with big bucks.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And they're buying barbecue grills and giving it to their friends and all kinds of food, and that's how it rolls. So the only way you fix that is you got to privatize it. There's what's that old thing? Anything I think it was Abraham Lincoln. Anything that people can do for themselves, they should do for themselves.
Yeah.
And the biggest place and the thing that's been the worst for the country out of all of these things the government does is the school system. Public school has been an absolute disaster because that's where they breed these communists.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. When you don't, especially if you don't have a good private school community or landscape and charter school landscape, you don't have a lot of competition.
Yeah, no. And obviously we're not going to, in my dream world, we just cut it off and get rid of it entirely. That's not going to happen. But at a minimum, you got to provide competition to it and allow. So school choice, the voucher thing, is the rational solution. Force them to compete.
Since the DOE was eliminated and the money is going directly to the feds, I haven't actually. That's probably something that we should talk about. I'd like to hear how that is going after we've just completed one school year. I'd like to see what kind of impact that's having on schools. I'm actually in August. I'm actually going to be working inside of a couple schools for something that I'm doing. So I'm going to start asking questions. Because I'd like to hear. What did your dollars? Did your funding go down? How has that influenced the kinds of how you're teaching your classes? How is that influencing the number of staff, the number of support staff that you have? Because there's teachers in the classroom who are doing their thing, but the administrative staff in a lot of these districts has just exploded. And I think that's where a lot of this DEI comes from, is that the district, not just DEI but CRT and this is where the new math came from, right? It's not the individual teachers. There are certainly some radical, wacky teachers, but a lot of this ideology is coming to the administrative office, to the superintendent, to the head of curriculum, and then they're pushing it out and they're requiring it. They're requiring and they're tracking accountability on all these different metrics, and so with funding being more restricted, I just wonder. I'm going to report back on that to find out what's going on.
No, that would be very interesting and good, I think. You know, my friend, you're not going to believe this, but it's 6:59.
What?
We
That's
blew through another hour.
that,
We did it again.
yes, we did.
So, any closing thoughts before as we wrap this thing up?
You know what? 4th of July this weekend. What are you
That's
doing
right.
for what are you doing for the 250th?
Ooh, so we have Fort Vancouver is the actual fort on the river here, the original trading post, you know, back in the gold rush and all that kind of Yukon and all that stuff. So we're gonna go there. They'll have a fireworks thing, not as big as there used to be, but they'll have some stuff down there. So we're gonna hang out there, and then it's like the evening with the family, just kind of
Yeah.
hanging out. So
Yeah.
that's it
Yeah.
for
I feel like I almost want to keep it a little bit more low profile. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of pride, of course, and a lot of
Yeah.
patriotism with my friends and family, but I I'm also kind of keeping a watchful eye. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
what's going on, what's the government looking at, you know, you just don't know. And I live in a military town. So there's a lot of key targets.
Mhm.
But I have I love that, you know, we have a president who loves our country.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate and I'm excited for what the weekend is going to be.
Yeah. Well, I have one. I'm maybe overly optimistic. We're definitely in a dogfight. These guys aren't going to go down without swinging. But
Yep.
boy, it hasn't looked this good in a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, so keep up the good fight. You know, what do you call it? Run through the tape, as they say in track. Run.
Yeah. Run the race. Run the race that you were called to run. Yeah.
Well, hey,
Yep.
everybody, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We always enjoy being here with you. And have a great week and a wonderful 4th of July.
Yeah.
Happy
Happy
birthday,
4th of
United
July.
States of America.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
God bless America.
All right. Good night, everybody.